From murder capital to a model of hope, the story of El Salvador's prisons. This country was once called the murder capital of the world. For decades, its name was tied to gangs, violence, and fear. But today, what was once a mark of shame is becoming something very different. A model of hope and perhaps an example for the rest of the world. Factories, farms, schools, and massive machines, all of this exists inside prisons. In El Salvador, the prison system has been transformed. And at the center of it all stands President Nayib Bukele, a leader whose war on gangs has changed the nation's destiny. This is the story of El Salvador's prisons, from chaos and bloodshed to a vision of order and rehabilitation. The dark past. To understand the present, we must first revisit the past. El Salvador is a small Central American nation, but its history has been scarred by decades of conflict. From 1979 to 1992, the country was torn apart by a brutal civil war. In those 12 years, more than 75,000 people lost their lives. Though the war ended with peace agreements, the violence never truly disappeared. In the mid-1990s, a new wave of terror arrived. Gangs that had formed in Los Angeles, MS-13 and Barrio 18, were exported back to El Salvador. After thousands of their members were deported from the United States, they found fertile ground in a poor and unstable country. Soon, neighborhoods across the nation fell under their control. Extortion became the rule. Families were forced to pay gangs simply to live in peace. Businesses closed. Children were recruited as soldiers of crime. Murders happened daily, to the point that San Salvador earned a horrifying reputation. The most violent city in the world. At its peak, the estimated number of gang members was over 50,000. The country became unsafe, with entire communities sealed off by invisible borders. A person from one neighborhood risked death, simply by crossing into another gang's territory. For many Salvadorans, there was no escape. The rise of a new leader. Then, in 2019, something unexpected happened. A young man of Palestinian descent, Nayib Bukele, broke through the dominance of El Salvador's two major political parties. He became president, promising a new vision for the nation. Bukele's campaign was bold. He pledged to dismantle gangs, fight corruption, and restore hope to his people. For a population exhausted by fear, his charisma and determination struck a chord. Once in office, Bukele acted quickly. Corrupt officials were investigated and jailed. Gang leaders who once seemed untouchable were captured and thrown behind bars. And most significantly, a new prison was built. A prison unlike anything Latin America had ever seen. CECOT, the fortress. The facility is known as CECOT, the Terrorism Confinement Center. It is the largest and most secure prison in Latin America. CECOT was designed to hold the most violent criminals, the gang members who for years controlled El Salvador streets. Inside, security is absolute. Thousands of tattooed gang members are housed in harsh conditions. Here, the state sends a clear message. The age of gang control is over. Images of CECOT shocked the world. Endless lines of prisoners, shaved heads, their tattoos revealing their allegiance. Their hands cuffed as they were transferred under tight security. To many Salvadorans, these images symbolize justice. For the first time in decades, people felt the gangs were losing their grip. Mariona Prison, the hope. But El Salvador's prison transformation is not only about punishment. Another part of the story lies in a very different facility. Mariona Prison, known today by a new name, the Hope. Once, Mariona was one of the most dangerous prisons in the country. It was overcrowded, violent, and out of control. But under the government's reforms, it has been reborn. Here, rehabilitation is the goal. Prisoners who are not connected to gangs, and who were convicted of lesser crimes, such as theft or fraud, are given the chance to work, to learn, and to change. The system is strict but rewarding. For every single day they work, 2 days are deducted from their sentence. This motivates inmates to participate in programs, instead of wasting away in their cells. Inside, there are classrooms. Inmates take courses in first aid, mechanics, electronics, and carpentry. Former professionals, engineers, doctors, teachers, now serve as instructors, passing their knowledge to other prisoners. There is even a music band, made up entirely of inmates. One singer was once famous on TikTok, before drugs and crime led him here. Now he plays music within prison walls. It is a transformation few could have imagined. A place once feared, now building pathways for redemption. Factories behind bars. What truly sets El Salvador's prisons apart are the industries built inside them. Entire factories now operate within prison walls. Inmates produce school desks, furniture, shoes, and cookies. They repair police vehicles, motorcycles, and electronics. In one section, prisoners are taught to assemble refrigerators, washing machines, and computers. Feels less like a prison and more like a city of workers. Inside the farms, vegetables and dairy products are grown and processed. Almost all of the food served in the prison is produced on site. It is self-sustaining, and it gives inmates valuable skills for life beyond prison. Everywhere you look, there is movement, learning, and discipline. Inmates are not free, but they are productive, and for many that makes all the difference. Neighborhoods reborn, but prisons are only part of the story. To see the true impact, you must step outside and look at the neighborhoods. La Campanera, once one of the most feared communities, is now unrecognizable. Where gangs once built walls to keep police out, residents themselves have torn those walls down. 2 years ago, residents paid gangs just to enter their own streets. Women and children lived under constant threat. Today, families walk freely. Children play without fear. Schools are being renovated. Life is returning to normal. A woman who once fled the neighborhood after being beaten by gangs has now returned home. For her, the change is nothing short of miraculous. In just a short time, El Salvador has gone from despair to a sense of safety many never thought possible. A nation transformed. This transformation is not without controversy. Human rights groups question the government's methods. But for many Salvadorans, the results are undeniable. Murders have dropped dramatically. Extortion, once a daily reality, has been reduced. And most importantly, people feel safe again. Prisons that were once symbols of shame are now symbols of productivity and rehabilitation. CECOT stands as a fortress of deterrence, while Mariona and other facilities serve as places of hope. Inside the presidential palace, officials speak of a nation reborn. And outside, in the streets, ordinary Salvadorans live the difference every day. Closing. From the horrors of civil war to the terror of gangs, El Salvador has endured some of the darkest chapters in modern history. But today, it is writing a new story, a story of leadership, resilience, and transformation through bold, sometimes controversial, choices. Factories, schools, farms, and workshops inside prisons, all part of a larger vision, to turn punishment into productivity and despair into hope. El Salvador, once the murder capital of the world, is showing the world what change can look like. For decades, the people of El Salvador lived through nightmares. Between 1979 and 1992, the nation was torn apart by a brutal civil war. Villages became battlegrounds, and the death toll climbed past 75,000 people. When peace finally came, it was fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Then came a new kind of war. In the 1990s, thousands of Salvadorans living in Los Angeles were deported back home. Among them were members of two gangs that would soon dominate the country, MS-13 and Barrio 18. They brought back their codes, tattoos, and weapons, and in a nation already weakened by poverty and corruption, they found fertile ground. By the early 2000s, entire neighborhoods were ruled by gangs. If you crossed the wrong street, you could be killed. If you refused to pay rent to the gangs, you could be beaten or worse. School children were recruited. Small businesses collapsed. Public buses were burned just to send a message of power. By 2015, El Salvador's murder rate hit more than 100 per 100,000 people, one of the highest in the world. That year alone, over 6,600 people were murdered in a country smaller than the U.S. state of Massachusetts. San Salvador, the capital, became known internationally as the most dangerous city on earth. For ordinary citizens, life meant survival. Mothers hid their children indoors. Fathers paid gangs just to walk to work. Police officers were outnumbered and outgunned. The country was drowning in blood and fear. But in 2019, something extraordinary happened. A young man of Palestinian descent, with a backwards cap and a modern vision, rose to power. His name, Nayib Bukele. A former businessman and mayor, Bukele promised to do what no leader before him had dared: end the reign of gangs completely. He spoke directly to the people through social media, not through political elites. He called out corruption, challenged the old parties, and promised action. El Salvador had seen decades of speeches, but Bukele brought results. Soon after taking office, he launched a historic crackdown on gang violence. Thousands of soldiers and police officers flooded the streets. Entire neighborhoods once ruled by criminals were reclaimed overnight. And in 2022, Bukele declared a nationwide state of emergency, giving the government power to arrest anyone linked to gangs. In just over a year, more than 60,000 suspected gang members were arrested, a scale unseen in Latin America's history. Critics said it was too harsh. Supporters called it the country's salvation.